Potato chips are probably the most comforting food man has produced yet. They crunch, they are great to munch, they are pretty cheap, and a full bag may as well be a stimulant. Let's see if we find any of your favorite old potato chip brands in this list. And we start our ride with Granite State potato chips. When we tell you picking a bucket of these up from Hampton Beach or before you went to watch a game in Florida was a familial experience, we mean that sincerely. So many kids grew up on some Granite State potato chips at core moments of their childhood, or it was their savior from having to sleep for dinner. The dip was heavenly, the chips were always fresh, and it was one of the first manufacturers in the USA, first coming out in 1905 in New Hampshire. The success of these potato chips meant that it set a standard that was not only hard to beat, but meant that people had to follow it for quite a while after too, making sure we always got quality chips in our bags even if the brands changed. Humpty Dumpty chips have saved many children from having their own great big falls, and whether that is the initial rush of the barbecue flavor or the tanginess of the vinegar and salt, these chips filled many cravings and never failed to do so. It was pretty common to go to states like Maine and see everybody carrying around a bag of Humpty Dumpties at their side or in their bag. Think of it like how we have Lay's today or Pringles, but on a more national level. At least, it was one of the only brands to have national advertising, and those ads were pretty memorable too. The company of which Humpty Dumpty is a subsidiary, Old Dutch Foods, put a lot of effort into their marketing. The most popular ones have to be the ketchup or sour cream and clam chips, but people dig the barbecue one a lot over the years. Jane Parker potato chips were a 1949 classic, and the chips were renowned for their incredible texture, which felt like eating a much thicker chip than what you were normally used to. Plus, those 4 dips were definitely phenomenal sidekicks to an already great snack. The dips only shine so well because of the flavors themselves though, and some of these were pretty clever for a bag of chips. Deviled ham, diced pickle, chopped egg and tomato plus some mayo. That was all in one bag of chips, which sounds like a steal. You are getting a whole flavor profile for just about $1.50, and that was only one flavor too. They had others that used cheddar cheese and Worcestershire sauce or cream cheese and French dressing. Basically, all palates were catered to, but despite its versatility, it could not last the long haul and eventually died out in the 80s to 90s. Clover Club potato chips held a dominance in many areas of the United States, especially places like Kaysville. Under the watchful eye of Hod and Clover Sandals, the potato chip company was founded in 1938, and it actually became pretty deeply tied to Kaysville. People would associate the scent of fresh hot potato chips with the town, and the site of the factory is a landmark even though it closed down 15 years ago. It was a lot of work to get their potato chips to be the main brand on the grocery shop aisle, but with enough diligence, they made it work. The whole factory was offering authentic, genuine potato chips with little additives mixed in, which helped their PR and their flavor. The corn chips in particular did some real numbers in the town, and in other states too. While kids from 3 decades ago would not recognize the name, their parents will definitely fondly remember. Bell potato chips also had their own take on corn chips, even if theirs was a bit before Clover Club started producing. The taste they put out inspired the industry as a whole though, and their entire range of different chips was pretty well known throughout the country. If you did not fancy potato, then they also had tortilla chips in flavors like onion and cream and barbecue. What was most iconic about the chips was probably the fact that every chip was shaped like a bell in each bag you would buy, which is real commitment to the bit, if you ask us. However, it was a pretty helpful marketing stint as it helped them gain a real identity different from other chips, which all more or less looked the same. Unfortunately, the Bell brand fell short of a century when their company closed down in 1995 after being open since 1925 due to financial issues. Laura Scudder's potato chips, both the woman and the chips she invented, were incredible. As an inventor, Laura Scudder made airtight packaging to go with these really delicious chips, which helped increase the shelf life of chips by over 200%. That was something the entire industry had to adopt because of its sheer effectiveness, so that's definitely one way to have a presence. The potato chips she made were loved far and wide across America, enough that she at one point held over 50% of the potato chip market share in California. Laura Scudder saw that the excess moisture found in most packages was killing the crunch of a potato chip, and worked around that so that everybody could have freshly crispy chips. We have a lot to thank her for, and Californian kids can certainly remember buying packs of these every day. Mr. Bumby's potato chips, on the other hand, were these really homely, comforting baked chips that felt like mom had just made them. There was a fair bit in the bag too, always enough to keep you full, or about as full as you would expect to be from a snack, but these came in a box instead of a bag. They were also one of the only companies around who were using dried russet potatoes in the chip-making process, something that the rest of the chip world had not quite caught on to yet. They soon would have to consider the prospect due to the success of Bumby's chips, though, and packs filled with 2 foil-wrapped stacks inside would be found in grocery shops everywhere, as kids would always come to clean those shelves out. General Mills has a lot of names on this list, and one of its most successful ones was Crispy Taters, which were these French fry and potato chip hybrids both in flavor and appearance. See, they were made to look like French fries, but they had all the munch potential of a classic bag of potato chips. It was the perfect combo since some people thought the shape of a French fry really added to the experience too. The branding at the time swore that after you had these chips, you would never look at either a fry or a chip the same again, and they definitely hit whatever middle ground was available with these. Cheapos was another brand that focused a lot on being all natural and healthy, and it had some pretty clever marketing to show that point. It would compare a chip from a pack of Cheapos to a chip from any other brand and place both of them on top of a cloth. Then they highlighted how the chips from other places left grease stains on the cloth and how Cheapos never did that, showcasing how little oil was involved in making them. This was a pretty effective scheme since it drove people to the market for a bag of Cheapos and captured the people who swore off packed and processed foods because of it being too greasy or unhealthy. In short, Cheapos, being made from dried potato granules, made you feel completely relaxed while you binged a whole pack because you were not sweating the calories. In 1967, General Mills popped out Joey Chips, which was their latest attempt at nailing the corn chip formula. They advertised it as something simple. The box on the logo would read part corn, part chip, and the flavor was all right enough to pass. These were not their most successful chips, though, as they managed to coast by a quiet 2 decades in the market, not really making any noise like some other names we have gone over so far. Despite that, they did cultivate somewhat of a niche following for people who adored corn chips over all other kinds, and it became a go-to brand for them. It catered to that market for a while before they discontinued it in 1995. As most chips were going all in with different flavors like barbecue and paprika, General Mills could not keep competing with just plain corn chips. In an era where cans of Pringles towered over every other name, Planters potato chips still managed to carve out a little piece of the world of American snacking for themselves. Something about the savory delight they offered as well as the bright blue packaging made them catch your eye when you walked down a grocery mart. They were crunchy, they were a lot more affordable than some of their competitors, and Planters' very specific dried potato taste felt like a sweet spot that other companies were dying to hit. Despite their popularity in the 70s, they could not really outlast Pringles, but no one can forget how these humble stacked chips truly gave them a run for their money for a good bit of time. The Tater Twists, on the other hand, were a marvel completely unique that people had not thought of before. You have heard of curly fries, but these took the twirly aspect to an entirely new level. It was like eating a skewer kebab made out of thin, spiraling fried potato chips, and it felt just as good as that description makes it sound. With the right dressing or dip, such as sour cream, some cheese, and more chives than you would normally have, these tater twists bordered on becoming an actual appetizer. They just were that good, and we are not sure if the taste was the selling point or the sensation of crunching those whirls of fried potato. Either way, they sold more than a few dollars and were incredibly addictive throughout the 60s. In 1934, we had Better Made potato chips, and the story behind their name is actually pretty straightforward in a way that almost makes it sweet. Cross and Peters was founded in 1930, and the owners who were Cross and Peter, yes, they had a lot more flair with their chip making than their naming, decided that they wanted to make a better potato chip. Hence, they donned on the name Better Made Chips, and when these launched, there were only 31 potato chip brands available in Detroit. Better Made lived up to its simple name by outperforming all 31 of those brands, as well as the expectations of its owners. Their fryers would be cooking up at least 100 pounds of potato chips at a time by the 50s, and they had all these flavors you were not used to, like popcorn and cheese. Even their take on a traditional flavor like Red Hot was pretty spicy and refreshing to have. Hand-peeled, sliced, and cooked to perfection, Kitty Clover potato chips were an incredible all-or-nothing gamble by the owner of Kitty Clover, Harold. He would prepare the chips himself and deliver them out of a room, and with only $150 to his name, he began his company with just a peeler, a slicer, a few bags, and a stapler. Even the name and logo were a very early version of what they would eventually be, but this company rose from very humble beginnings to the top of the pile, all thanks to its genuinely delicious potato chips. Harold at one point had to trade 40% of his business just to make the deliveries, but it all paid off when he got his first store at South 24th on Pierce Street, and by 1952 they had their own chip-making facility in Omaha. From just a small room to being the world's largest producing potato chip company until 1987, that sure is one success story everyone would like to hear. They even had their own strain of Idaho potatoes, which would be delivered personally to the brand. Taking a step away from Detroit and Omaha, let's go on over to Texas and see what rocked taste buds there. One quick look will show us that Morton's potato chips was an undisputed ruler in the 60s and 70s, and whether that was the intense diversity in flavors with stuff like vinegar, onion and garlic, sour cream, barbecue, cheese, and more. They had something for everyone, or at least they tried to appeal to a wide range of audiences. Morton's merged with General Mills later on in '64, but their chip making remained true to what got them on the map in the first place. Morton's was not just good at backing up its bark with a mean bite, though. The art of landing a catchy commercial also seemed to be something the company was blessed with. The Carpenters commercial done by siblings Richard and Karen Carpenter was a big hit for them in the '70s and made them popular all over Dallas. Morton's had tin cans as well as potato chip bags and was one of the better lines of General Mills throughout the years. Crinkle potato chips were another famous invention of the Bell brand, and these kettle-style ridged potato chips were the go-to for many sandwiches, or just plain snacking in general. They were a lot thicker than you would normally expect a chip to be, and they were cut to be that way so that the crunch factor would kick in 3 times harder. Crinkle potato chips went great on wedge sandwiches or things like a tuna salad sandwich, and the best part was that they were made using all natural ingredients. You did not have to deal with any kind of trans fats, which were picking up a pretty bad rep in the later parts of the 20th century. No GMOs or cholesterol-increasing ingredients were used either, plus they went great with all kinds of condiments: ketchup, sour cream, ranch, or even mayo, and a bit of sea salt really amped up their flavor. Chipsters was like a mix between Fritos and Takis, and it was pretty popular in the 1970s. It was one of the few chips that came in a box at the time, but it competed with any other brand on the market like Oniums or Potato Crisps. They were lighter than most chips you could usually find while also being French puffed and crispier, so it was easy for them to build a lot of goodwill with customers right off the bat. Nabisco considered them one of their best-running products when they were out, and after they got discontinued, there were online petitions everywhere pleading that the company bring these back. Some people find it hard to let go, and it gets even harder when what they're parting ways with tastes as good as Chipsters. Plus, they did well all around the states, from places like Illinois all the way over to Oklahoma, Washington, and Hawaii even. Meanwhile, in Indiana and the Midwest, Chesty potato chips were making their mark as a growing national brand worth keeping your eye on. Chesty Foods first started producing these in Terre Haute, and they were one of the cheapest brands you could get, with a bag only costing 5 cents at the time. After they got discontinued, they would be a popular pick for the menu for events like National Potato Day, where Americans would often reminisce about all the godly potato snacks they lost out on, kind of like what we are doing now. The packaging also had this boy with a puffed-out chest, which made them easy to remember since most chips looked pretty standard, with red or orange backgrounds and a big fat logo. While the price or the look of the box might be what drew people in initially, It was the homely taste of the chips that kept them coming back for a new pack each time. Kane's potato chips were popular for popularizing both the term marcelled and the concept of thick, wavy-cut potato chips across the USA. See, in the 1930s especially, the trend was thin chips which felt similar to crispier wafers in texture rather than thick slices of fried potato. That is exactly what Kane's potato chips offered to the average teenager, and we have to say it stuck pretty well considering they lasted all the way into the 1970s, and this particular stretch of history was filled with innovative brands and new trends shaking the status quo. In particular, Northwest Ohio took to the idea very fondly and adopted thick, wavy-cut chips from then on. Kane would use a salting machine from 1953 onwards, which helped ramp up production, and it gave them the savory and salty flavor they would be known for. Guy Caldwell started Guy's Nut and Candy in 1938, but it would branch out into the potato chip world soon enough. Guy Caldwell personally oversaw the production of his ridged potato chips in the early 1900s, and his cheddar and sour cream flavor would give any modern brand a run for its money today. They probably had the best barbecue flavor in America at the time, and these two, along with their sour cream and onion variant, were enough to secure them an uncontested spot in the snack scene across the country. Jenkins Foods is the one that makes these chips now, but who would not kill for a bag from the 1930s straight from the supervision of Mr. Caldwell himself? That about does it for all the munching we can do about chips from the past today. Give us a thumbs up, subscribe, and let's keep those memories alive.